So I asked pretty early on in the conversation, can you give me an idea of what something like this would typically cost or a price range? And she said to me, we're going to get to that later in the conversation, which immediately made me put up a wall, and I wasn't interested in continuing the conversation then. Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Roush, your own personal sales maven, here to offer you tips, strategies, and techniques to master your sales conversations. Today, we're going to be talking about how to overcome that sticker shock, how to confidently present your pricing when you're talking about a high ticket offer. Now, this is a common challenge for business owners when they have these high ticket offers, especially if there's something about this offer that's a little bit niche. It's not a common thing that people are used to purchasing or procuring. So they may have no idea or any concept at all around pricing. And if you're finding that you're getting into these consultation calls and people are clutching their pearls and having sticker shock, there are some things that you can do to help alleviate some of that. Now, just being really candid here, not everybody's going to be a client and not everybody's going to buy your high ticket offer. So there is a little bit of that you need to, set your expectations accordingly. But there are things that you can do that are going to help you. So we're going to talk about how to pre-frame in your pricing discussions to eliminate that sticker shock and then confidently present the investment to the prospective client. Okay. So here's a question that I often recommend that people ask in their consultation calls, which is, what is your budget? Or something around their investment. We need to have that conversation fairly early on in the conversation so that we're not wasting time and energy talking to people who are never going to buy, who aren't ideal clients. And I'm going to say there are some ways to change up this question a little bit when you are talking to people, when you have something that is potentially a high ticket offer for them. There's ways to change up. So instead of just asking, what's your budget? We're going to change that question a little bit. And this is, again, when you are talking to people that don't have any kind of frame of reference from pricing standpoint, right? Like maybe it is whatever your offer is fairly unique. It's not something that they've probably ever purchased before, or something that maybe they are not even sure yet about how it's going to provide value in their organization or to them personally, depending on the type of business that you're selling to or end user that you're selling to. So that presents a few extra challenges here. Okay. So one of the mistakes you don't want to do is wait until the very end of the conversation before pricing is ever addressed. Because then you get to that place where they see this price and have sticker shock. Now it creates this weird energy between you and them. Now, I find that this comes up often with people who have some kind of a niche service. I often find that this can come up with some of my interior designer clients because they oftentimes don't want to have any kind of pricing listed on their website. So people have no context. And I know with my interior designer clients, it feels like there's a lot of unrealistic expectations in the marketplace as to what it costs to hire an interior designer. And as an interior designer, your job is to educate. And regardless of what your product is, so this episode is actually not geared towards interior designers. I'm just using that as an example. And as a matter of fact, what spurred this conversation and me wanting to record this podcast for you wasn't from my interior designer clients in any way. So I want to clarify this, that if there's something that you are talking to potential clients about and it isn't something where pricing is readily available or they've seen pricing or maybe they've ever procured this before, chances are they're going to have some sticker shock, and you need to do everything you can to eliminate that happening so that when you get to the place of discussing price, then when you start talking hard numbers, it's not like an uncomfortable conversation. It's not them having to be like, Whoa, whoa, whoa. I had no idea. And now I don't really know how to tell you that I can't afford this, right? So there's some things we want to do. First, before asking the budget question, here is a question that I do recommend asking. And frankly, in your consultation calls, this is a great question to have in your back pocket, and you ask it early in the consult. What's your criteria for making a decision about this? What's your criteria? And you can frame that question however you want, but it's a criteria question. What's your criteria for deciding whether or not you're going to move forward with this? Or what's your criteria when you are when your organization is deciding which company they're going to work with? What's your criteria? So we need to know some criteria before we bring up pricing. Okay. Because that's going to help us when we're delivering back the proposal. We want to make sure that our proposal meets their criteria. And then the investment, it takes some of that, like, well, that's what it takes in order to meet their criteria. This is the solution. This is going to solve the problem, meet the need. Okay. So we want to know what are the things that are going to help them decide. And then now, by talking about criteria and bringing that into the conversation, this allows to shift from just talking about price, and now we can talk about value and priorities. Okay, so that's an important key thing to think about here. And then next, you can also talk about when you are using this criteria question, you could ask something like, or a question you might ask is now, how will you be utilizing this, or what are the results that you're looking to achieve as a result of this work, right? Now, before that question, you could give an example. You could say, when clients are looking to attract investors, for instance, they typically find that when they have this type of presentation to give, that they're able to raise somewhere between X and Y dollars. You can give them an example, and then you can say, what are you looking to achieve? So you follow up. So you give that example, and then you follow up. Now, just to bring this back, because I mentioned interior designers, another way for you to say that is to say, typically, interior design services are going to range between, 15 to 25% of your overall budget. So when you're thinking about your overall budget, how much have you thought about, or how much of it are you planning to commit to the project itself versus design fees, right? Like, you can frame this question a little bit. And then you can also, before you ask the budget question, you give a range. This helps eliminate that sticker shock. So instead of just saying, what's your budget? You would say, now a project like this could typically range between X and Y. And I really don't care what this range is. You can, give a realistic range here. Don't give a really low ball range if you know that you never, ever had a project that came in at that price point, because you're not really helping yourself here. So you could say, projects like this typically range between $25,000 and $75,000, depending on the scope and customization. So given that, what is your budget for something like this? So you give this range first. Now, if you're early in the conversation and they hear this $25,000 to $75,000, and they like clutch their pearls and go like, oh my gosh, we were just planning to, invest $10,000 in this project. And for a fact that $10,000 isn't going to even be something that you could have a downsell offer for. It's not even something that would be realistic with what it is that you're talking about. Then that's an indicator. Okay, this probably is not an ideal client. It may make sense now to just bless and release. We don't need to spend a bunch of time and energy putting together a formal proposal for somebody who, has not even a quarter of the budget of what it's going to take, or even 50% of the budget of what it's going to take in order for them to get the solution, to meet the criteria, solve their problem. There's really no point in continuing that conversation. Now, if you have a downsell offer, if you have a getting started, or you have a solution that would get them that first step towards solving their problem, by all means, you could certainly, bring that into the conversation. And you have to be willing to stand in your place of credibility and authority and speak to what the true investment is going to be. This idea of trying to hide it is not a good idea. I may have shared this story before on the podcast. I know I've shared it with clients. When I was having a conversation with somebody and I was asking her, I had no concept about pricing. And I was in the position of being the buyer here. And I just had no concept as far as pricing of what we were talking about. What she was talking about to me was interesting, but I needed to know. And so I asked pretty early on in the conversation, can you give me an idea of what something like this would typically cost or a price range? And she said to me, we're going to get to that later in the conversation, which immediately made me put up a wall, and I wasn't interested in continuing the conversation then. So I'm a big believer, and I teach this, that when somebody asks you about pricing, you have to have an answer and you give the answer. Now, again, you can qualify, and ask some follow-up questions and you can give a range. But if you try to avoid this because you're afraid of what they're going to say or do, and you think, well, I haven't had the time yet to establish the value, so I don't want to talk about pricing, it breaks down trust. It breaks down I don't feel like this person's being direct with me. I'm not even sure they're being honest. Therefore, why would I give my business to them? So we don't want to send that message. We want to send the message that we're confident in our pricing. And even if they have sticker shock and you say, a project like this could range between $25,000 and $50,000, depending on scope and customization. So based on that, where do you fall in that range? And they're like, whoa, I had no idea. You don't need to feel uncomfortable about that. That's just the pricing. It is what it is. It's kind of like saying this is the time of day. It's a fact. That's just the pricing. So if somebody's like, well, I only want to spend 5,000 and you don't have a solution that's going to get anywhere close to giving them what they're looking for, then you bless and release. Okay. Now, the other way to help with the sticker shock is to not just focus on features. You have to talk benefits as well. So this was an episode I did a few months back where I talked about, features, advantages, benefits, and the importance of doing this. That episode, if you haven't heard it, please go back and listen. And if you have heard it, chances are, if you're one of my clients, we've been talking about this a lot. Clients are hiring me for strategy sessions, asking me to review this. I guess it's not as easy sometimes when you're talking about your own stuff to really figure out benefits, not just features. So feature is, saying this is what you get. We provide this service, right? You get an interior designer that is going to give you a plan. That is a feature. What is the benefit of it? This plan, so that you have a guidepost every step of the way, so you know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and the investment that it's going to take to get it to completion. That's a benefit, right? So you have to take it one step further. So when you're talking about your solutions, don't leave out the benefits piece, because then when we get to the hard dollars, they start to see value, not just a price tag, not just the sticker shock price. Okay. This is really important. The other thing is that when you are talking about pricing, you want to be careful about not going into a few things. No justification or over explanation as far as well, pricing is this because of this thing and that thing. And, I've got staff I have to pay. They don't need the story. Leave it out. It's irrelevant to this part of the conversation. The other thing you don't want to do is discount before you have given the price to them. If they're not pushing back on it, there's no reason to discount it first and foremost. So stand in your place of authority, credibility, expertise, and state the price. And then also, I think I mentioned this already, you talk about pricing as if you're stating the time of day. It's just a number. Just like the time of day, it's a number. And it's a fact. It is what it is. So if you have hesitation, if you get uncomfortable when you're talking about pricing, you're sending the message to the other person that you are not confident and maybe they should shop around. Maybe they should talk to other people, right? Like, don't have hesitation when you're talking about your pricing. Just state it and let them have their response, their reaction, whatever it's going to be. You're resilient. You can take it, whatever their response is going to be. And if they have this big, huge, like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, I had no idea. Okay. Then, you ask this question. Well, what were you planning to invest in this? You get curious. That's all it is. You don't have to be offended. You don't have to defend it. It's just, we're just curious. We're just checking it out. And if we're not a right fit, that's okay. Don't waste their time. Don't waste your time trying to convince somebody that they need to pay a certain price. If they don't get it, they don't get it. But it's your job to try to take out the sticker shock early on. So, of course, this goes back to some of the fundamentals. I do recommend having price ranges, if not pricing on your website. I do recommend bringing it up early in the conversation if you know that it's something that clients often are surprised by. You've had enough consultation calls to know that people are like, oh, what? When you talk about pricing, then we need to eliminate that because that gets into your head. That becomes like one of those like negative thoughts in your head of like, nobody can afford me, nobody wants to buy from me, people don't see the value. Like if you're telling yourself that stuff, it's probably because you haven't made it really easy for people to know whether or not they're a good fit for you because you're not comfortable putting your pricing out there. So stand in your place of authority. Bring it up. If you need to bring it up early in the conversation, then by all means do. And I will say, there are certain conversations when I get a sense that this person has some hesitation, they've made a comment or something that made me think they're uncomfortable with price, I'm going to address it right then. Now, there are other times in a conversation, in a consult call, where I don't bring up price until they ask for it, but I'm gauging that based on the conversation. And I've had people say like, yes, I'm in, Nikki. I want this VIP program with you. And we haven't talked pricing at all. And they're already pulling their credit card out. And then I say, this is the price. And they go, great. Like we've established value. But if they're showing any hesitation, or if I'm getting on calls with people that are like, what? I had no idea that that's what that you charge. Although I have pricing all over my website. So there shouldn't really be shockers for people if they've done any kind of research or if they know what it costs to hire a sales coach. But if they don't, if I say like, have you been talking to other sales coaches? Do you have an investment in mind? And they're like, I have no idea. I'm probably going to give a range right then. And I have had somebody before say to me, like, I'm really only looking to invest $100. Okay, great. You are a perfect candidate for all three of my books. You can get them, all three of them, for less than that, right? Like that's okay. And it's okay to say like, that's the solution for you based on that level of investment. So what's yours? Okay. Eliminate sticker shock as much as possible for your own mindset, but also for the clients too. Because when you get to the nitty gritty and you start discussing working together, when you get steps to step 4 and 5 in the selling staircase, the proposal and the close, there really shouldn't be shockers in that part of the conversation because we've done our due diligence and moved it to the place where now it's just about them saying like, yes, this solution that you have, recommended for me absolutely solves my problem. I understand the investment and now I get to decide, is this something I want to move forward with or not? It shouldn't be any like defending pricing at that part of the conversation. If you're doing that now in your conversations, that is an indicator that this needs to be brought up earlier in the conversation. So go back and think about, how are you framing the budget question? Are you asking about criteria? Are you focusing on features? All of these things are going to make a difference to how it's received in the conversation. All right, that's the episode. I am wishing you so much success in all that you're doing, and no sticker shock. That's really what I'm wishing for you. No sticker shock from anybody. We want people saying, yes, I'm excited. Sign me up. Here's my credit card, or how do I pay? All right. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.